Hey there, and welcome back to day 5 of the Essential SQL Challenge. And today we're going to look at how we can group and summarize our results. So today we're going to use the SQL group by clause to summarize our results, and the main purpose of doing this is so that we can use a couple of functions in our query to help allow us to either get the sum of a value or count rows and essentially group our information and summarize it. And so before we get too much further into this, I wanted to just talk about how this is going to work and what the mechanic is. So let's look at a kind of a conceptual view of how the syntax for group by works. And here you're going to see, some familiar elements like we select columns. Okay, that makes sense. We're going to select columns that we want to bring back from our table from a from clause, obviously. Now here's a thing to keep in mind. We're going to use a group by statement to actually in a sense, take like rows of data and consolidate them into a single output for our result. And this happens through looking at a set of columns in our table, and if they have the same values, then they'll be in the same group. So if I have column 1, 2, and 3 as my groups, then as those columns have the same values, they would have the same group. Now the trick is that whatever columns I use for my group have to be the columns that I select. So let's just take an easy case. I'm just going to output a grouping of people by last name. Well, then I would have the last name selected. It would be from the person table, and then I'm going to group by last name. And then I could count on last name or something like that, and then that would tell me how many people have that last name. Now lastly, which is kind of interesting, is that you can order the information. So most of the time you're going to want to put an order by on your statement that's the same as the grouping, because curiously enough, even though you're grouping the data and you would think it would order it, it really doesn't. It'll group the data so it'll start looking like it's ordered, but it may not be in strict alphabetical order. The groups will all be there, the groups will all be good, but sometimes the groups aren't in order. So before we go too much further, you may be going, well, can I do the same thing that I've done in the past, just using distinct, right? Because early on in the challenge, we learned about how I can select distinct values from a table, and here I got an example where I select distinct sales order ID and the carrier tracking number from a table, and this will bring back the same result as if I went in and picked the sales order ID and carrier tracking number and then grouped by it. Grouping is kind of bringing back those unique occurrences of that field, right? So what's the main difference? Well, what group by brings to the table and adds value for you is that you're going to be able to now add these functions like sum and count to your queries. So that's the cool part. So you're going to be able to, sometimes people call these aggregate functions. So you'll be able to add a function, for instance, like here, where we can count how many lines are in our sales order detail for a carrier tracking number. So let's try this. First of all, we're going to do it without, because I think it might be fun to see, just to see it without. So I'm going to run it. So here's sales order carrier tracking. So this would be just as if I had done a select distinct. So nothing fancy there. Now I'm going to put the count on here. And what this is saying is just count the number of rows within each grouping. So now when I run the query, you're going to see where I get for a certain sales order and carrier tracker number how many lines there are on that sales order, right? Because what we're seeing here are all the order details. So this is kind of a cool way of being able to take a peek into your data to see maybe what kind of activities occurring on certain sales or areas of your system. Now, again, what I mentioned before, you may want to use the order by to, be able to get your information sorted in a good way, because, right, if you notice here, these aren't even sorted, right? So I could right here, let's get rid of that, just say order by, and then I'm going to just copy this just to show you probably what most people would do all the time. I'm going to just order by the same thing and then run the query. See, now I got the sales orders are ordered and then the carrier tracking numbers. But mainly it's a sales order ID that you're going to see it ordered by. So that's a good tip, is to always order by. Before we move on and give you a chance to work through this on your own, I just wanted to point out that you can actually do math with the summaries. So if I look at my expressions here, I can actually have multiple expressions, right? So this is kind of cool. I got the sum, the average, and the count. We just had done the count. So now I added order and average line total. And what's cool is I can actually do math between these guys, right? So let me show you that down here where we have the sum and I'm dividing it by the count. Right? Now, that's what's really cool about that is I'm calculating the average total, right? And it really should be the same as the built-in value for the average total. And you can run this on your own to see if they equal each other. But the cool thing here is that it's important for you to understand that you can actually take these aggregate functions and use them in expressions. Okay. So definitely, this is a really cool unit, and I think here, once you get the hang of the groups, you may want to just go in and make sure you have a good understanding of what min, max, sum, and average are doing. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but if you are wondering, I think count might be an interesting one. There's some features there that you can do beyond just counting a straight row, and then again, I would probably just go in and look at summarize your results by group by. If you're looking to dig, deeper than deep, then you may think about going in and looking at the order and group by and what's the difference between the two, and it'll kind of talk about the difference, and that may help you understand this just from a different perspective. All right, so this was the 5th day of our challenge. And you've probably noticed that everything we've done so far has been focused on a table. All right, so what I'm really excited to talk about is that tomorrow, I know today was supposed to be the last day, but tomorrow I'm going to add in a bonus day for you, okay? And what I'm going to introduce is how you would join data from one table to another, all right? So we're going to talk about really the next step in your database learning, which is, how do you relate the data in the database together? So this is going to be important stuff. So you're definitely going to want to look at the email tomorrow and follow along the lessons on this bonus, and I think you're going to really find this enlightening. So until then, I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Go through the additional resources, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.